Music City Social is produced by Star Maker PR Group, providing publicity and public relations services to the entertainment industry. Learn more at starmakerpr.com.
My guest today is guitarist Don Carr. Don is one of the very first people I met when visiting Nashville in 1987. It was he who offered me the drumming gig at the Holiday Inn Vanderbilt and is probably the reason I never left. He is one of the finest rock guitarists I have ever heard, yet for the past 22 years he has played guitar for the iconic country group the Oak Ridge Boys. Before touring with the Oaks, he performed with and became good friends with Marie Osmond. In between touring, you will find Don recording in many of Nashville's finest studios. Because Don is one of my best friends, we dropped the question and answer format for the show, hit record, and had a conversation. Here we pick up as Don is telling me his experience with a Pro Tools engineer whose job it is to edit vocal parts one syllable at a time.
Mark was doing a thing for Brown Bannister, and what I noticed that was really bizarre, the thing that freaked me out about the whole editing deal is he showed me the Pro Tools the file, the waveform, the wave file. As you can see it on the screen, it looks like a graph, obviously, with the, and he showed me, there's a line where all the edit points are. I mean, obviously, because you worked in Pro Tools, right? Obviously, sure. Yeah, there's a marker where all the edit points are. They were maybe 2 words or a syllable.
And another marker.
Every word was edited, and it was so they got the performance they wanted. But of course, there's a million edit points, and you can't make that sound like anything. So it was Mark's job to do that, to turn that into a vocal performance. Even though the guy sang it however many times he sang it, and they edited in these particular things, they wanted this T and this S and this breath and this, whatever word or 2 words. But there was never even a line that was a cohesive, like 4 or 5 words or, a bar or anything.
And that was just on the vocal track.
And it was a guy who was a contest winner. It was American Idol, actually. But he was in the top 5 or whatever. So he was so the guy could sing. Obviously, I mean, he had something.
Yeah.
It's not like he was a non-singer where you're just trying to take somebody that can't sing at all and turn it into a musical performance, which you can do that too.
Sure.
But yeah.
Wow.
And that's funny because that was kind of Mark's last straw where he said, "I'm not doing this anymore." He said, "This is ridiculous."
So has he changed the way he produces, or?
Well, to some extent, but what he mostly said he wasn't going to do was, "I'm not doing any more of this editing for hired nonsense."
Wow.
I'm not. I'm getting out of that game. That's when he decided I'm going to call the shots and decide what's going. That's kind of when he became a producer.
Wow.
So that was kind of that was his like breaking point. But it really stuck with me. I'll never forget that.
Do you do a lot of studio work?
Yeah, I do.
You tour a lot.
Yeah.
How many shows a year do you do with the Oaks?
150.
Oh my goodness.
And some of those are double shows in a day.
Jeez.
So yeah, and so it's a lot of travel and it's a lot of one-nighters. We do occasionally 2 or 3 nights in a row somewhere, but for the most part it's one-nighters. So it's traveling day to day. So you typically, just so you can kind of understand the schedule, load ends at 10. We might get there a little early. We might get there late. Show is early. The latest will ever be, it's like 8 or 9. So we're there essentially from 10 until 8.
Wow.
And that's the whole day. And a lot of times we'll do that and have 2 shows, and we'll do a show at 6 or 3.
So you're at the venue for 12 hours.
Yeah. We never, and the whole point is we're only in town for 12 hours.
Wow.
And if that town happens to be Spencer, Iowa, then we got to bust our hump to get there. do our 12 hours and bail out. So it's pretty it's a lot of travel. I like to I was thinking either my gravestone or my autobiography is going to be in transit.
In transit.
Yeah, in transit.
You've been with the Oaks for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, and I remember 20 plus years ago, you've always enjoyed doing studio stuff.
Right.
How has touring that much, how does that affect getting in-town work?
Greatly. I'm really fortunate that I have a couple of clients who are forgiving of my schedule, and honestly, the whole Pro Tools thing, for all the hurt it's done for a lot of the business, like we were talking about, it's done a lot of great stuff too. It's like any other technology, it's going to have its ups and downs. And the upside is that I can take it with me. I can record on the road if I have to. I can, or I can go down as an overdub. It's so much easier. It's not as essential because you can build a track however you want to build it, and it depends on the nature of the work. If it's real creative work, obviously you want everybody there at the same time working. But if it's like one of the things that I've done a lot of is sound alikes for karaoke. Sure. And so that's just copying. So it doesn't matter when I record it, as long as it's done before the deadline. Right. So if I have to come home and do 2 songs at one day when I'm home, and then go and then do 5 more 3 days later, as long as I get it done before the deadline, before the client needs it. So that's kind of helped out. But yeah, as far as like really building real solid accounts and being in the studio all day every day, that's kind of out of the question with the touring thing.
Does a studio or a producer, whoever hires the talent,
mm-hmm.
for a song or for an album when it's being recorded, are they checking who's available, number one, or are they saying, no, I have to have Don Carr on this track? What?
It's funny that a lot of times that stuff is the producer's call. That's and the farther up the ladder you go, like if it's an actual record or even a custom record or something like that. If it's a song demo, your producer a lot of times is your artist, or your songwriter, or what, however you want to look at it that way. But that's their call. And they're usually looking for somebody they know, somebody they feel comfortable with. It's mostly about establishing a relationship, because the producer knows what you're capable of.
Right.
And how you work, and you have a working rapport. So at that point, they go, yeah, Don would be great for this. Or, well, you can't get Don? I wonder who else would be good for this,
Interesting.
That kind of thing. And so so that's where the touring thing really interferes, because in order to have a working relationship, you have to do 4, 5, 10, 20 things together, and then they go, oh yeah, you're perfect for that.
Interesting.
So
you're probably going to stay with the Oaks until they're probably done touring, which
that's hard to say, because without, golly, I don't want this to sound bad, but it's inevitable with anybody's career that there's going to be a decline. And how that decline happens and how it affects my end, because I'm still ultimately going to have to make a living. And if they're doing, I don't know, if they're doing less dates, that's going to affect my income.
Right.
So I don't know, because right now it's really a full-time job, and all the studio work that I do is kind of like a part-time job, like anybody else would have, in that sense. So it'd be really hard to say. Ideally, yes, but it's ultimately going to depend on my needs versus what they can supply.
Yeah,
which is hard to guess and hard to know, and so it's funny. It's a full-time job, and I've been there 20 plus years, so it seems like, well, wow, you're in and that's that. But it's still just an account. It's a really good one.
Well, and
but
it's
still just an
extremely
account.
rare.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
That's
any job. In
any job.
business.
That's right. But
These
this in
days.
particular, I've gosh, with all the people we both know, there's so many people that, they gig for a year and the artist wants a change or the musician wants a change.
Right.
And so, yeah, you're a lifer.
I am. I'm an anomaly, that's for sure. There's a handful of us out there, and that's about it. Some of the guys with Millsap and some of the guys with Kenny Rogers, and that's really I'm sure there are others. I must really stop and think about it. I can some of the guys with Loretta Lynn, but I really have to stop and press it and think about it.
That's true. Who did you play with before the Oaks?
Marie Osmond.
Woo!
Whee! Paper Roses.
Wow. And her son used to do a song or two at the time.
Yeah, Steven.
And he's Steven passed on.
Yeah, it's tragic, man. That's one of the hard things about growing older and growing up and stuff. I remember Steven. He was just a little guy. I remember when he was, I don't know. How old was he? 8 maybe? 8 or 9?
Yeah, and he would sing "All My Exes Live in Texas" because I saw you up in, I think, New York. Maybe when I was the T-shirt guy for Lee Greenwood.
Right. He was funny because he had that typical Osmond kind of stage thing that they all had. He totally had it, but he didn't really embrace it. He didn't like it as much as they did. Which that's just a kind of a observation from afar. But he always had kind of a certain disdain for it. Like, oh, Mom, really? I got to go do this again? Jeez.
Yeah. How did you get the Marie Osmond gig?
Let me see. Let me think back about this. I was working with an artist, Earl Thomas Conley, and there were, there were these 2 English girls. This is really funny. That every year came to America in the summer. It is funny, really. I swear it's freaking hilarious.
This is funny.
Just get ready to laugh. See, you're already laughing. It's perfect. But they came to America every year and got something at that time that was like the American version of the European Rail Pass. It was you could fly you pay $500. You could fly standby on Delta for like a month. Anywhere Delta went, it was always standby.
Oh, wow!
But you could, I know, isn't that a
so
weird
you just
thing?
Cruise around.
So that's what they do. They just cruise around and they would go see the sights. And they loved American country music. They loved it. They loved it. And started out, they loved American pop music, and they were like huge Donnie and Marie Osmond fans.
Wow!
Right?
Well, so was I.
Well, of course.
When I was a kid.
Who wasn't, man? We all watched them on TV.
Yeah.
It was great, man. A little bit country, a little bit rock and roll.
Yes.
But they also, like I said, they liked American country music, and they loved Earl Thomas Conley, who had a great voice. He had an amazing radio, friendly voice. And so they would always try to get to just, befriend people and, befriend artists and befriend whatever, and musicians. And oddly enough, they knew that Marie Osmond's guitar player was leaving. And they said, I want to introduce you to Jerry, the musical director at the time, Jerry Williams. We want to introduce you to Jerry because you guys would get along great. You need to be working for Marie.
Wow.
It was just like a total friendly thing. And they introduced me to Jerry. And at that time, this were like pre-internet, pre-cell phones, all that. I think maybe they gave me Jerry's number. I don't know. But it was the same thing. They were just kind of casual friends, easygoing. And it was interesting because they were from England and, like, what are you doing over here?
Wow. So did you even audition, or was it just...
Yeah, I did. I did typical audition thing, In fact, it was really kind of a downplayed audition. I don't even think I auditioned with the whole band. I didn't meet Marie either, which was really weird.
Wow.
But also, she had total trust in Jerry, knowing that he was going to do what needed to be done and get the right guy, so... But yeah, I did, just a quickie audition with like 3 or 4 guys, and we sat around and talked and, played a few songs, and was like, yeah, cool.
Now, was Jerry based here?
No, Jerry was living in L.A. at the time.
And Marie still out of Utah.
Right, and Marie was out of Utah. Jerry was originally from Utah. And, man, you're really taxing my brain. This goes back. And was living in L.A. and so when we would... But it was funny, all the rest of us were based out of Nashville. So anytime we would leave town, Marie would come to Nashville. She would fly to Nashville. In fact, she had an apartment in Nashville.
And Vinny was here.
Yeah, right.
Vince Barranco.
Right. Yeah, Vince Barranco and Frank Myers and Gary Baker. Gary lived in Muscle Shoals, but that's a quick drive up.
Yeah.
And oh man, Leanna Manus and dang, who else? I think that was it. I think that was the whole band.
Wow.
If I remember it. Wow. Anyway.
So she would fly here, and you guys would get
hop
on a bus
and go to wherever. Yeah.
Wow.
Or if it was, there were a couple of times. This was really cool. There's a couple of times where we would do a lot of stuff. Of course, we'd work in Utah a lot. She was a big hit in Utah naturally, and so we would fly into Salt Lake City, and we'd like stay, say at the Doubletree downtown for 2 weeks, and we'd maybe do like 6 gigs or 7 gigs.
Oh,
and
fun.
we'd either bus it or van it or whatever to wherever we were playing. So we were headquartered, she'd headquarter all of us. Oh, and God, lest I forget, Brooke Langton, the steel player.
Wow.
Guy played steel.
Did you get to meet the rest of the Osmonds?
Yeah.
All of them? I mean, the ones we know.
Yeah.
Which I can't think of a single one at this moment other than Donnie.
Yeah, Merrill and Alan and Jimmy and I met most of them.
Jimmy was the brains, wasn't he? Wasn't he kind of the money guy?
He was kind of the money guy. Yeah, he turned into like the money guy. He's got a lot of I don't know if he still does, but he had a ton of investments in Branson.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I think he's the one that got the brothers going in the theater there. I'm speaking a little out of turn. I don't know for sure here, but just
that's okay.
From what I gather, from what I remember.
Wow.
And,
did they still have Osmond Studios when you were there? At one time, I knew they filed bankruptcy.
Yeah.
But they had this enormous television and talent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they filmed shows
huge.
there.
Yeah, that was where they were working. That's where they were doing their TV show from at one point. And of course they recording studio and all that. I'm not sure. It was still there, obviously. I don't know how in business it was or what it was actually doing. I'm sure I know stuff was still going on, but actually a couple of times I went and recorded stuff, and it wasn't at the Osmond Studio thing.
Right.
So I mean, I'm assuming it really was kind of parted out and pieced out by them, and this would have been like 89, 90, 91. That area, it was already kind of going away at that point. But the other funny thing is that I'd always heard that Donnie was like the engineer, like the repair guy, like not afraid to lift the hood of the console and get a soldering iron down in there and start fixing. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, and he turned out to be that. He was.
Yeah. I mean, that was his. That was one of his talents. Obviously was.
Wow.
Electronics, which pretty interesting.
What was the most interesting thing about working with Marie Osmond?
Oh my gosh, man, so many things, because
they are iconic.
I know.
They really are.
I know. And it's funny too, because at that time, you remember this. If you were on television, it was like the mysterious black box.
Right.
You were like untouchable. You were like from another planet. The people on television were just like, wow.
Well, there were 3 channels.
Yeah.
ABC, NBC, CBS.
Right.
And it was important.
Yeah. Exactly. And we were all so far away from it all.
Yeah.
And it had that, they were so good at creating that facade. I mean, totally sold us on, how perfect everything was and how wonderful everything was. So it was really, that was my first like lifting of the veil moment, so that was pretty interesting. Meeting someone and working directly with someone and being employed by and hanging out with somebody that was in that world because I'd never done that before. And that was your first glimpse of, it's kind of it's cliche to say it now, but at the time it was huge. But it's cliche to say, well, they're just people that put their pants on one leg at a time. But
difference is I make gold records.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. I got a fever.
Right.
Right. So yeah, it's, like I said, it's cliche to say that now, but that was really, really huge. And then to find out that she's really like a great person and not the typical, snobby Hollywood, I'm so full of myself, stuck up, or I'm better than you, or whatever. Not at all. Not at all. Just really down to earth.
Do you think she was just so ingrained, or it was so ingrained in her, that lifestyle, being an icon, that she didn't...
Yeah, it was just her gig.
Yeah.
It was just her gig. She knew. It was like, yeah, this is okay. This is the... And it wasn't even like I'm going to put on my stage persona, or I'm going to put on my... Because in a way, it was also what you see is what you get. I mean, she was sweet and bubbly and kind and caring and, fun and silly and, whatever. I mean, that was just, that TV persona, that was just her. And it's not like, I'm on all the time either. It's funny. It was just her.
Wow.
It was just, that was her. And it was really interesting to see that. Man, she had this amazing talent, though. This really cracked me up. I'm giving away a trade secret here, I'm sure, but I gotta say it because it blew me away.
I love it.
She had this black makeup case, and it wasn't very big. It was smaller than a toolbox, like a really handy toolbox size. And it had, she lifted it up and it had a little mirror, had a couple of trays and a thing in the bottom, and it had everything she needed. And she would go, she did it herself, and in like 10 minutes, she would go from... She could walk through the airport with her hair pulled back and nobody would recognize her. And she'd put this makeup. It was like Clark Kent, man. It was like this whole total Superman transformation. She put the makeup on. It was like, oh, there's Marie Osmond.
How funny.
And it wasn't anything really overt or huge. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, she's ugly without the makeup. It was just like this little combination of stuff, and she like became the superstar. Yeah, yeah, the light, the little the star or whatever.
I met her thanks to you, and I remember, and my wife will slap me for this. She was really pretty.
Oh gosh,
She's very pretty in person.
Oh yeah. But honestly, without the makeup, not stunning, not star, just.
It was the polish.
Yeah, just pretty,
Yeah.
But that's part of the pro thing too, though. She's a total pro on every level in that way too.
Wow.
When it was showtime, it's time to work, and this is what you do, and dig in and get it done.
So, what was the transition from Marie Osmond to the Oak Ridge Boys?
Oh, it was the simplest transition in the world. We did the first Christmas tour that the Oaks did. Marie was the opener, and their guitar player was leaving, and everybody, we hung out with the Oaks guys, on that tour, obviously, and it was like, hey, the guitar player's leaving. Hey, well, why don't you come audition? Well, okay, sure. And they had a big audition process, and they'd already figured out who they wanted, and I was the last guy to audition. They did the audition process anyway.
Oh, so you weren't the choice.
I wasn't the choice. And I was the last guy to audition on the very last day. They were just like, oh, yeah, come on over and play and whatever. You already got a gig, so whatever. It doesn't really matter. And it was like, wow, this is cool. We need to do this.
Wow.
So.
How fun.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, the guy they had promised the gig to was there for a couple of months, and then he actually quit. So I was still with Marie. But a couple months later, I was with the Oaks.
And when you joined the Oaks, did you see it being a 20-year gig?
No.
I mean, really, what were you thinking at that time? Like, okay, and then.
Yeah, I was. Honestly, I was thinking. I was thinking I want a solid job. I want something that I can rely on for a little while.
I like food.
Yeah, food is good. Yeah, shelter. All that stuff. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just thought I want a solid job. These guys, don't fire their band every 6 months
Right.
because the record flopped or whatever, which was so typical of artists at that time.
Yeah, they are not dependent on sales
Nah.
whatsoever,
No.
I would guess.
And to an extent, they never really were. I mean, of course, when you have a breakthrough record, they had Elvira, which was a huge breakthrough record. When any artist has that, that's your career record. But the more important thing is, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And they were always they always worked 200 or whatever dates a year from the time when they were a gospel group. And so the records were always just a support of all of that.
Wow.
But it turned them into an international act, and gave them a bigger platform to work from. And so they always just toured, and that's their thing.
So basically, you've been on tour for 23 years?
Yeah.
All right, let's say that shuts off tomorrow. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Do you look for another tour, or do you focus on Nashville?
Well, it's interesting because if with my age and my experience,
28,
yeah,
29, yeah.
I might be I would be in a weird position. I would probably, unless somebody just said, "Wow, you're really great, and we really need someone with some experience." Most artists are always looking to hire either somebody their age, younger, somebody new, somebody it's the fresh kind of concept or whatever.
Right.
I might be misconstrued as not being fresh. I mean, and to the point of I think when Carrie Underwood had auditions a couple years ago, it was, if you're over 25, don't audition or something.
Wow.
So there's a lot of that sort of prejudice. So a guy, closing in on 50, would be, oh, you're somebody's grandpa, no matter what you look like or play like or where you've been or what you've done. That's irrelevant. So I may be looking for a gig with an older artist if I was doing that, which those are a little tougher to come by. So I don't know. I definitely keep my options open. But I would really rather focus. It would, the ultimate thing for a lot of guys that are trying to transition into Nashville work is, wow, if I could find a job that did 30 or 40 dates a year and paid a decent day rate, then that's like a pad. That's like a base. And then you can, and you're not struggling. You can pay your bills, but you can also develop your in-town contacts, and
right.
However those are going to flesh out, whether you're, whoever you're working for and whatever kind of work they do. Because that's the interesting thing about sideman, session man, work for hire stuff. It doesn't matter if it's background music for a soap opera or for a, Amway convention, or if it's like what I do, like sound alikes for karaoke, or if it's a big hit record or whatever, or some guy from Houston who's an oil millionaire who has his daughter wants to sing, or whatever it is.
And that's pretty common.
Yeah,
isn't
it's all those kind of scenarios, and probably more that I don't even know about. I know that another thing that's getting really huge is library music, which is just basically music that is used in the background of anything,
like television or
right. It could grocery stores. I mean, anywhere at a convention, booth, anywhere there's music, which it's so prevalent now.
Yeah.
But instead of custom tailor the music for the specific event or the specific thing, there's a whole. They're almost like publishers, but they're like music library houses where it's like they have catalogs and catalogs of music.
Interesting.
Where it could be anything from new age violin and percussion to this kind of in the vein of Jimi Hendrix or what. So you can custom, if you're a client that way, you can custom order your music. Yeah, we need something kind of up. We need something kind of young. We need something that sounds 60s. We need something that sounds retro. We need.
So they build a catalog of licensable music for
for specific events. So that's another big thing. And with the home recording thing, I would really like to be able to concentrate on that. Now all of a sudden the speed of the internet has helped tremendously, where it would be totally possible for me to record studio quality guitar tracks at home and market them to individuals, whatever they're doing, whether they're making their own record at home to give to their friends, or they're going to be the next breakout artist,
right?
Or if it's, again, any kind of work for hire, send me your track. I'll play guitar on it. I'll give you 4 or 5 options. You can pick one you like. And
you're kind of setting up shop to do that now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, guitar for hire via the internet,
right?
And, what's your domain name? How could people find that?
Don Carr Music.
Don Carr Music.
We're going to set that up. .com.
Very cool.
DonCarrmusic.com.
Neat.
That is in the process right now.
How will that work? Let's say you do a little bit of marketing and somebody's looking for guitar parts. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're recording at home or in a studio with Pro Tools.
Right.
How will they describe to you what it is they need done?
Well, it's gonna depend on the client, and then everything is going to be individual. It's going to depend on the client, and the nature of the work, and whatever their experience or skill is with all of this. I would gladly help people through every part of it if that's what they needed. I'm going to charge a yet undiscovered predetermined rate hourly, and
around 1,000 an hour.
Oh yeah. Well, 30 minutes.
Oh, 1,030
minutes, yeah. Right. So but yeah, I'm gonna I'll charge an hourly rate. But if the client really knows what they're doing and really knows what they want, they can send me an email and say, hey, this needs to sound like When Doves Cry, the Prince song, or whatever. Put that kind of guitar thing on it. And they can send me an MP3, and I can put a track to it. And as long as everything's to a click, they can take my raw wave file track and open it up in Pro Tools, and or whatever recording process they're using, just open up that wave file that's been sent back and forth over the internet. The way that I'm hoping this will work is send me through my website your MP3. I'll download it, play to it, or your Pro Tools session, however, send it to my website, and then I'll upload mine back to my website. You come to my website and take it off. The other thing too is that, again, depending on the client and what they want, you can get into a lot of areas where people can try to, I don't know how to say this right. It's going to be about giving the client what they want. Obviously, that's the key. And I'll have examples on my website of stuff that I've done in the past, so you can get some kind of idea of what I'm capable of, and if you think I would fit with what you want.
There's not much you can't play. I know that from experience.
Well, thanks, Drew. Appreciate it. Yeah. I'm trying to have a large, depth and of experience. And the nice thing about doing it at home on Pro Tools is that no matter how complicated or specific or whatever somebody wants, if they're able to direct me, I'll be able to do it. And if they just say, hey, whatever you think, then I'll give them a few options. If somebody sends me a written part that they want it played exactly note for note like this, no problem.
Yeah.
So just, it's going to be about, it's a little tricky, and I've done it with some success already, not through a website, just sending, using yousendit.com to send larger files back and forth and work that way. And I've had a lot of success doing it that way already, but it's with people I know,
right? And
so they know more of what I'm capable of. So it'll be interesting when I start marketing to people that don't know my playing. But I'm hoping that some of my audio samples that I'm going to put on my website, that they can look at my resume and sort of a bio thing, that they'll get a feel for what I'm capable of.
Well, and two things I do want to mention. One, people may or may not know you're one hell of a rock guitarist. I mean, you play for the Oaks, and that's a great job or gig for you, but I mean, is your passion more rock?
Well, sure. That's what I grew up playing.
Yeah.
You know, it's from the very beginnings. I mean, that was the stuff that moved me before I even held a guitar. You know, pop and rock and that sort of stuff. All the stuff we heard on the radio.
Right.
Then eventually delving further into, you know, artist catalogs and stuff. That's the stuff that moved me.
In addition to playing great rock guitar, someone could send you an idea for a song and you could create and produce the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's not just guitar. So how would somebody deliver to you the idea for a song that maybe isn't finished or has never been recorded?
Wow. Well, that comes in all shapes and sizes. A lot of times, you know, if you've got somebody that knows enough about song structure and songwriting, they, you know, some kind of functional instrument, you know, can play guitar or piano or something. So even a simple, I mean, it could be anything as simple as, you know, turn on the record feature on your phone and, you know, sing and play guitar into it and send me that.
Yeah.
And go from there. That would be, I could do full-blown production, you know, as far as it needed to go, and I could take it to a studio and we could hire players and make a record and the whole deal.
That's what's cool about Nashville.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a Pro Tools rig at home and you can do wonderful stuff there, but there are so many resources here. Other musicians, the studio quality, I hope you do more of that.
Yeah.
Of helping people really produce things.
Right. Well, it's a lot of fun. There's actually an artist that I just finished co-producing. He was as much producer as I was on this project, but it's going to be a great record. It's a rockabilly record. He's really a rockabilly artist because that's where his heart is. You know, that's what he wants to do, and he's got a record out currently called Rock and Roll Time Capsule. His artist name is Sweet Mikey C because his name is Mike Campbell, which you know is would be a huge mess, you know, with the Tom Petty Mike Campbell. You know, so his rockabilly name is Sweet Mikey C.
Cool.
And man, I think the name of this album is going to be Scooby Daddy.
Scooby Daddy.
Yeah, Scooby Daddy.
That's cool.
It's great. It's very rockabilly. We recorded it at Java Jive Studios and used the same core rhythm section for the whole record. It was myself on guitar and Dave Martin on bass and Chris Knoll on keyboards and Chris Golden on drums. And that was the core rhythm section. And for a couple songs, Johnny Hyland came in and guested on guitar. Jeez. And Bobby Keys guested on sax. Bobby Keys of Rolling Stones fame.
Yes, a friend of mine, Glenn Carroll, Sticky Fingers band, just recorded an album in L.A. and used Bobby Keys. Oh,
yeah. Bobby's great, man. We got Bobby's name through... it's funny because Mike is from West Texas. And the artist, Mike Campbell, he's from West Texas, and that's where Bobby's from. And they actually knew a lot of the same people, and it was really interesting. But we got Bobby's number through another friend of mine, Mike Webb, who plays in Bobby's band. And man, I'm blanking on the name of Bobby's band, but Bobby has, but Michael plays keys with Bobby.
Yeah.
So that's how.
There's another example. In addition to the recording quality and all of that stuff available here, the players, I mean, you can literally have a Toby Keith rhythm section playing on your demo or your custom album.
The talent pool is ridiculous, and the fact that it's such a small town, everybody kind of knows everybody. You're never more than 2 steps away from anybody. I mean, literally, if you're kind of in at all and know anybody, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know everyone.
Exactly. They're all on my speed dial. The whole world is on my speed dial.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are some of the things you can put together for someone.
Absolutely.
You can record an album with the players that are recording albums all day, every day.
Yep.
That's
Absolutely.
a very
Absolutely.
cool thing.
Yeah, easy enough to do, man. They're all literally a phone call away.
Yeah.
And it's, it's the all, if the price is right.
There you go. Tell us a little bit about what it's like endorsing a product and how that works. And am I saying that right? Do you endorse a product, or does a product endorse Don Carr? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. It depends on the level of commitment you have with the company. A lot of companies are getting a lot more savvy about that. Because it used to be, it used to be Eric Clapton plays Fender guitars or whatever. It was that extreme. And now it's more like a lot of people play these guitars sometimes or most of the time, or endorse these products, and it's not exclusive.
Oh.
A lot of people don't expect you to be completely exclusive. Wow. It's just more like, hey, I choose this guitar. I like this guitar. That's and like my relationship with Mesa Boogie and Paul Reed Smith currently, that's more what it's like. It's like I would play Paul Reed Smith and Mesa Boogie if I had to go buy them from a music store.
Right.
It just so happens that I have an endorsement relationship with them. I'm in a catalog or on a website or whatever if you go looking, but I'm not like, they're not taking out a full page ad in, Rolling Stone or whatever with my picture on it. And most of their artists are that way. It's the same way with, I actually have endorsed GHS strings for a long time.
Wow.
And golly, man, Larrivee acoustic guitars. But it's the same deal. It's just like, you're working. You're out there. We want this in your hands.
Right.
Because your picture is going to show up in a lot of places. And so if you're standing there, if you're one of the many, hundreds of guys that we want to be playing Paul Reed Smith guitars, for example, when your picture shows up, we want you to have a Paul Reed Smith guitar.
Right.
So it totally makes sense. In fact, Paul Reed Smith every year does Paul himself actually comes and hosts a party for all the Nashville endorsers.
Wow.
It's a lot of guys. It's huge.
Bet it is.
It's like 75, 100 guys, and some are maybe a little higher up the scale in terms of importance for them, but most of them are guys like me, just working guys, but it's more about getting the instruments in the hands of the guys who are working to say, these are,
How do they find you? I assume you've never called GHS and said, hey, this is Don, I need a string deal. Do they find you? I would assume.
Well, it's kind of both, actually. This was a referral. Paul Reed Smith specifically was a referral. Who was it? Brian Franklin, that plays guitar with Kenny Rogers, was a very early Paul Reed Smith endorser in Nashville. Nobody else was playing Paul Reed Smith guitars in Nashville, honestly. And Brian said, "Hey, man, I know you need a guitar endorsement, and you need to meet, Wynn, who is the artist endorser, the artist relations guy for Paul Reed Smith. You need to meet him." And so we actually played really near the factory. We played at Wolf Trap, and their factory is in Maryland. And so they came to the show to see Brian, and we met that day and talked, and he said, "Yeah, man, you'd be a great candidate as an endorser." So it's sort of that thing. It's not like they're not casting their net out trying to drag people in, but you're not knocking on their door going, "Please, please, please."
Right.
It's more of a good fit relationship kind of situation. And it's been that way with everything. It's funny. I've always kind of like stumbled sideways into these deals. It's never been just like a cold call and, "Hey, give me this." It's always been a referral from a friend. Yeah. Mesa Boogie was the same thing. It was Frank Goodman, who was at that time was an employee of Mesa Boogie, but he was also a songwriter in Nashville. And we hooked up, and he said, "Man, you need to be endorsing Mesa Boogie amps." So There you go.
Interesting.
The same kind of fit.
I've called DW. They will not return my phone calls. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Snobs. That's what they are. They must be snobs.
They're in my living room.
What
People will see them.
Exactly. That's funny you should say that, because I know the guy that could totally hook you up.
Oh, don't
with DW.
say that.
I do. I'm not kidding.
Oh, man.
I'm not kidding.
That'd be awesome. Okay. In addition to talking about it being sometimes difficult to find studio work when you're on the road so much.
Right.
How has being on the road affected personal relationships? And I don't just mean with women. I mean, you and I see each other, if we're lucky, about once every 2 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, that has to make it difficult for all relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Unless I'm mistaken.
No, that's absolutely the truth. It's almost like everything is put on hold, even with as connected as we are. And cell phones and the internet have helped dramatically. I mean, pre-cell phone and internet, it was your life stopped and you left and went on the road, and then you came back and it started back up. So it was literally as if, the world's moving, in this world has moved a week, but you've only moved 2 days because you've been gone 5 days of that week. So and there's still some of that. And relationships with people, it's that way, because you go, hey, let's get together. We got to hang out. We're going to have lunch. And you sound like you're being insincere because you can't really make good on that promise, because there's only so many days that you have at home.
Right.
And so everything just takes longer. It takes longer to get to that, hey, let's do lunch. It's not, and it's funny because it's not like I've forgotten.
Yeah.
It's just there's only so many days, and I got to cut the grass, and I got to, whatever I got to do. I got to do some laundry.
Has that made personal relationships difficult, or do you kind of know going into it, hey, this is what I do. I'm gone this much and I'm here this much? Sure.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's no surprise or secret. It's sometimes dealing with the reality of that. Because it's one thing to know it, and then it's another thing to enact it in your life and have it actually there.
Yeah.
But so going through the details of that can be difficult. But basically, that part of it's not. It's not. There's no surprises, or very few surprises.
Right. You're doing a little recording while you tour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got the tools now to do mobile stuff, but at the same time, you're gone for a week. You come back for 2 or 3 days, and you're kind of building business in the Nashville studio scene.
Right.
And so it just doesn't sound like you have any time. Seriously, it really doesn't. It's
not a lot. And it's funny, because that's when you really start getting into priorities, and you have to say, this is important, and so I have to make sure this gets done. And the thing you try to search for so much is like, okay, what can I do in my downtime, my in transit time? What can I do? And that's where the phone thing is just like invaluable. I mean, being able to answer email on my phone, riding down the road. Obviously not driving. I'm not driving. I'm riding. But being able to do that is just wow. I mean, it's just tremendous. Or actually call somebody. And that can, and the interesting thing is, you still got your home life to take care of. So if I got to schedule, a plumber to come over, I can still do it on my cell phone instead of waiting when I get home to have to call. I mean, I know this sounds silly because cell phones have been around for so long, but it's really, all that kind of stuff has sped up everything. So what you really do is you try to find as many things as you can to accomplish while you're on the road. So when you get home, the things that absolutely have to be done at home can be done at home.
Interesting.
So that's, and again, the mobile recording has made a huge, oh my gosh, I got a laptop and a 2-rack space box that's my Pro Tools interface and my guitar sounds, the 11-rack actually, and a laptop, and the recording gear is all self-contained. I can throw, and a guitar, and I can do anything I need to do.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Do the buses have internet now? Do they have like Dish or,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's helpful too. It doesn't work quite as well traveling because it's just, like if you've ever driven down the road with your cell phone, it drops out. And,
Right.
So while you're riding, not so great. It's possible, but it's not so great. But, once the bus stops, no problem.
Don Carr, thank you so much for being on Music City Social.
All right. Thanks, Drew.
My guest today has been Don Carr. In addition to touring with the Oak Ridge Boys, Don writes music and provides guitar tracks and production assistance to those needing record-quality guitar tracks for their recordings. You can learn more about Don by visiting our website at musiccitysocial.net.
Music City Social is produced by Star Maker PR Group, providing publicity and public relations services to the entertainment industry. Learn more at starmakerpr.com. Promotional consideration provided by Super Rope Cinch. Secure anything with rope without ever tying or untying a knot. Learn more at superropecinch.com.